Thank you for auditing the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who's going to be reviewing the album by George Clanton, Rap I Yah. And I'm really excited because halfway through my second listen to this album, I came up with the thumbnail and the through line to this video. I don't like just to do reviews. I don't give scores. I give thoughts. So I had this idea that really solidified listening to this album. And you saw it in the thumbnail and the title, Everything Lame is Cool Again. Now, what do I mean by this sort of intentionally paradoxical statement? Well, there are sounds, there are musical styles, musical choices, production choices, instrumentation choices, which when I first hear them, or when I first heard them, immediately dismissed as being lame or that most Gen X of all insults, cheesy. And then eventually, over time, they're revisited in my mind, and I realized that they aren't, that I was just being overly cynical, that I was incapable in my cynicism of seeing the beauty of this art, which initially repulsed me for many different reasons. Often, the reason that this revisiting, this recontextualizing of older sounds happens is because some newer artist remakes those sounds. And this happens in a cultural way, like a larger cultural scale as well. For a long time, the kind of cheesy synth pop sounds of the 80s were just sort of relegated to cheesy synth pop. But eventually all these bands in the 2000s came up and used all these sounds, and pop acts used it. And now as an entire culture, entire musical culture, we look back at the 80s and a lot of songs which we dismissed as being cheesy and lame, we now understand were well-crafted, interesting songs. But it was sort of mediated through these brave or repetitive or derivative, in some ways, artists who took those sounds and just redid them. So that's the context under which I'm going to be reviewing George Clanton, Rap I Yah, or Ooh Yeah I Rap. I'll get to it later. I wrote down the title properly later. If you're here and you don't know my style, I think a lot about stuff, but sometimes I mess up on the details. So feel free to correct me now, but I'll get there in a second. So you may be wondering, what led me to review an album, which I don't even really know the title while I'm talking to you? And why don't I edit this out? I also don't edit my videos. So I put up a poll in my community feed in YouTube saying, what have I missed that you want me to cover? Because I was on vacation for 3 weeks, and then I've been catching up, and so I've been just missing all this music. I do 3 to 4 videos a week. That's a lot. That's a lot of music. It's a grind. I don't mean like Sigma grind set. I mean it's a grind. I grind through a lot of music. And I was expecting the number one choice to be something I'd even heard of. I was expecting, I don't know, what's it, Blur, something like that, or maybe, I don't know, Trippie Redd or something. Instead, it's someone I'd never heard of. Well, at first I thought it was George Clinton. I'm like, wow, my auditors are fans of funk? And then I reread it, oh, it's Clanton, not Clinton. And then I saw the name, what I thought was I Rap Ya. That's what I thought it said. And so I thought, oh, okay, this is going to be that sounds like a good name for an underground, Koreatown oddity, sort of weird Milo style, smarty pants rap hip hop album. And then I listened to one song and I was like, oh, okay, that's not that either. Oh, it's not I Rap Ya. It's I Ya Rap, and okay. And I'm listening to it, and then I'm like, well, no, I'm not going to review this. I don't like it enough. And then over the next couple of days, the post that said, would you please review this, got 100 thumbs up. And then I got 3 more people saying that they want me to review this album. So my initial hesitation, which was because I thought it was lame and cheesy, which I'll describe more, I had to overcome it. Because if you like my channel enough to be on my community tab, to subscribe, that means that there's a good chance that you're the kind of auditor that I can learn from. A good teacher learns from his students. And so I really listen to it. Because if there's something that my mostly a lot younger than me audience really loves and really values, and I don't initially value it, that's part of this channel. That's part of what you have to do. If you want to get older without getting older, in your brain, your body gets older, your beard gets grayer, everything hurts, ha ha ha. My back hurts. I'm a comedian. If you want your brain to stay younger, then when young people tell you something is good, your first reaction should be, is it? Not, no, it's not. So it really helped me to understand because I put this in the same context, and even though they're different genres and different continents, of a sort of Scandinavian rap artist like Blady or Blady as I call him, or Blade as he calls himself. A sort of easy listening softness, a kind of vibe-centric music which doesn't feel like what I wanted music to do when I was young. When I was young, I was a young man. I wanted music that made me grit my teeth, punch in the air, that made me want to just, get psyched and headbang or punch somebody or punch the window. I didn't like punch other people, punch through the window, just sort of like, hard. And there's this whole world of music that is soft. And I think it's important. And I think I've been working through these theories as I go through why are there so many young men attracted to very soft rap. And I don't mean soft in the way of like, my girlfriend left and I'm gonna kill myself. I mean more like just like the sounds are just so gentle and so rounded. And this feels like it's part of that continuum. But what happened was, the more that I listened to it, the more that I got it. And my little pet theory is that, we live in a world with so much information. Even if you're not ADHD, the world might make you ADHD because you have so many screens in your hand, you have so many people fighting for your attention, so many companies fighting for your attention, everything fighting for your attention. That's something that allows you to relax and sort of mentally disconnect, provides a great value. But then I liked it, Then when my initial take was, this is just lame, delicate, fake-ass 80s, 90s soft rock. When I actually listened to it, well, everything lame is cool again. I couldn't turn it off. I came home, I was in the kitchen with my family, hanging out with a baby and a teenager and all that stuff. I'm pumping this album. We're dancing around, we're listening, it's a very enjoyable listen. I was listening to it this morning while eating breakfast, I was listening to it last night while eating dinner, while preparing dinner, and the whole thing has this smoothness to it and this enjoyability without ever being, like, it's smooth, but it's not shapeless, if that makes sense as an idea. It's like when you actually listen to it, you hear it's very well crafted, even though it is not trying to sound well crafted. Have I even said the album title properly? At this point, it's starting to bug me. So, I'm going to look it up. I'm sure I have it on somewhere in my notes. Ooh, Rap I Yah. That's much better. As a linguist, actually, now I'll spend a second with the title, because ooh, I rap ya is what I wanted to make it. Subject, verb, object. That's how English works. Most languages are subject, object, verb, such as like in French, it's I, you, love. You don't say I love you, I, you, love, right? So that's subject, I, you, object, love, verb. So as English speakers, we always want to autocorrect anything into subject, verb, object. So that's why I turned it into I rap ya, turning rap into a verb. But it turns out that rap in this case is actually just one of the songs. He just says, ooh, rap I ya. There's no actual meaning to it. I was trying to ascribe some kind of greater meaning to this essentially garbledy-gook phrase, but that's me, sort of. That actually is symbolic of my initial hesitation to this album. I couldn't accept it for what it was because I wanted it to be something else, and my preconceived notions of what ooh, I rap ya might be as an album were just defeated. So it's exclamation, verb, subject, object. It's totally nonsensical. It's not even clear if rap is a verb in that sentence. Okay, hey, I am a linguist, okay? That is my job. But despite what the state of California and the state of West Virginia would like you to believe, linguistics is important stuff. So, what is it? Why is it lame? Why am I saying this is lame and cool at the same time? Well, if you grew up in the 90s, like I did, there was like a whole continuum of this sort of soft, lame music that was the main sin for me as a classic rock boomer. Okay, I'm throwing around generations, but like a lot of thoughts about music were really formulated in the 60s and 70s, and sort of anything that was related to disco or dance music or synth music or drum machines was considered to be sort of a secondary art, sort of not worthy of a real drummer, you know, John Bonham or Keith Moon or just somebody just bashing, you know, like a drum machine was essentially an immediate no for me. With the exception of rap music, if there was a drum machine on it, I just wouldn't listen to it. And there's this whole wave of music in the 80s and 90s that created these kinds of vibes. You know, I mean, you go as far as Enya, who makes very soft, gentle music, which is a punchline. It was a punchline for decades in my life to call something like Enya. Sort of on the hip-hop side, there's groups like PM Dawn, which were just like making this music, and they were ostensibly supposed to be rappers, but didn't do any of that, you know, don't call it a comeback. It'd be more like, don't call it a sleepy time tea, you know? But really the best example I can think of is a group called Enigma. So if you don't know Enigma, they would do these things of like taking a drum loop, mixing in some of their own singing, and then mixing in, you know, like African sounds or tribal sounds, and then especially like chants, like church chants. And there was this weird moment in the 90s, and this is true, I'm sure there's YouTube videos about it. Look it up. Like Gregorian chants, like medieval chants, were a hit in the 1990s. Like it was, you know, remember when sea shanties were kind of popular because of TikTok? It was like 10 times bigger and more bizarre than that. Like there were albums of chants, like just straight up recorded chants in churches that were on the Billboard Top 40. So, you know, I don't know. I can't tell you. I didn't listen to that garbage. You know, I heard, sorry, my computer's going off here. I heard this kind of music. I heard the drum machine. I heard the soft singing. I heard the kind of meditative vibe to everything. And I just said, no, I'm going to listen to more Led Zeppelin. You know, I sort of like, and then this continued on into my adulthood where I just wouldn't listen to any of this stuff unless maybe one of my brothers did. You know, I called it, you know, planetarium music. You know, when you go to a planetarium and they're playing sort of like boo boo doo 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 doo, or like loading screen music on a video game, or if you're at a spa, you know, like, and you're in the waiting room at a spa, that kind of music. Cucumber water rock. If you're ever in a place where you're about to drink cucumber water and you play George Clanton, it would go together. So that's lame. But it isn't. I re-listened to Enigma in preparation of this video. Man, Enigma's great. Like, they're doing really cool stuff. It's very interesting, very well constructed. Enya is actually pretty good. I listened to some of her stuff as well. Like, I was so quick to dismiss because of these signifiers of lameness and of softness that it really did take listening to George Clanton over and over and over again for me to understand, hey, this vibe, this emotion, this state, this style of musical production was always cool. One time my son burned his fingers on a Pop-Tart. He took it out of the toaster and said, stupid Pop-Tart. And I said one of the worst things I've ever said as a father. I said, son, it's not the Pop-Tart that's stupid. That's funny. We talk about that as a joke in my family because it's an example of what a jerk I was as a father. You know, that's not a useful thing to say, and it's quite funny. But in this case, it's not the Pop-Tart that's stupid. It's not the music that was lame. It was actually me. So thank you to George Clanton, and thank you to my auditors for making me confront this music and realize that, hey, maybe PM Dawn, in the parlance of our day, slaps after all. Who knows? Now, one thing I will say about George Clanton that he's not doing is he's not trying to make pop. He doesn't include hooks, you know? And this is this other thing that's going on here where he's kind of what they call Vaporwave, this sort of distorted, dreamlike music that is trying to take the familiarity of 80s and 90s soft music, but alter it in such a way that it becomes what Freud called uncanny, or in German unheimlich, unhomelike. That's the sense. Like you feel like you're at home, but not at home. That's where uncanny comes from. And that's what Vaporwave is able to do. It's able to put you in this position where you're like, oh, I know what I'm listening to. What is this? I'm familiar, but unfamiliar. It's hard. It's a hard thing to achieve, the uncanny. It's a very difficult thing to do. And to do it well creates in the viewer, in the spectator, in the public, a very interesting, painful, and satisfying feeling of confusion, sort of broken nostalgia, all these kinds of feelings. And that's what George Clanton is able to do here. It's also not trying to be pop, so there's not like hooks. So instead, it sort of actually puts us into the realm of shoegaze music as well, with its layers upon layers upon layers of sound, which I'd like to tell you, to my shame, to my absolute shame, the first time I heard My Bloody Valentine, I dismissed them quicker than I dismissed My Chemical Romance, or My Morning Jacket, or, what was it, My Uncle the Martian. Like I completely dismissed My Bloody Valentine because it had that softness, because it had that repetitiveness, that I actually just sort of put it in the realm with Enigma and that kind of music. I've of course revisited, and I really enjoy My Bloody Valentine now. So when we get to this idea of this music, this lame music that's cool. Lame music that was always cool, but is made cooler by the recontextualizing of new musicians trying to recreate it. There's a danger. And the danger is that it's done ironically, that it's done as an exercise in style. And what makes George Clanton great, and I've never heard any of his other music before. I don't know if his previous albums are like wildly different. I don't know if his like previous album was, I don't know, like a garage album or whatever. You can tell me, tell me in the comments if I should listen to his other stuff. I really enjoyed this. But this album, as far as I can tell, is not ironic. As far as I can tell, he's not being a goof. He's not doing a stylistic exercise. This feels like it is an artist truly expressing himself. And the way that he wants to express himself is with a palette and a paintbrush that was perfected in the 90s, not one that was perfected in the 2020s. So that's what makes this sort of everything lame is cool again style of music, is that when it's done well, it's not ironic. But it has to be aware of the possibility of irony. Are you following me? I'll say it again because that's kind of a complicated idea. If it's just purely sincere, if it's just like making music that sounds like it's music that people thought was lame 20 years ago, without understanding that you're doing that, there's a sort of naivete to that almost puts it into the outsider art realm. But if you know that that is what you're doing, and if you know that that is something which is often done ironically, but you're not doing it ironically, that's what I believe gives it the sort of artistic interest of this album. I'm sorry for the light being so weird, by the way. I feel like I'm like turning into a weird little ghost over here. My family is asleep, so I'm like trying to be chill down here. I had to turn off the white noise machine. Is that better? God damn, I look weird, huh? Does it bug you? Anyways, if it bugs you, you can... I mean, no one even really watches me, right? They just listen, because this is basically a podcast, but I like YouTube more than I like making podcasts. So if you like that kind of admission, please smash the like bucket. If you want to say AVAA, awesome videos always. I will always give that a heart. And subscribe. The algorithm is still mad at me for going on break, so definitely any kind of interaction with this video does help me, or any of my other videos. They are just mad at me. The algo kitty is upset. So let me give you an example of this album, okay? This is not my favorite song. I'll tell you what my favorite song is, but Justify Your Life is the second track. Click above my books to hear the song. And this is a really good example of what's happening here. I mean, it's just, when I listen to it, it's just such a 90s drum loop. Such a 90s soft pop rock drum loop. Simple kind of pulsing beat. Kind of a filtered sounds to it. The guitar that's being played is just at the end of phrases to leave a certain sparseness, kind of a siren behind. It reminds me a fair amount of like later New Order music, so not the stuff that I like more, like the more popular early stuff, the Substance and all that. More like kind of the later stuff, and also a fair amount of shoegaze as well. And so he creates this whole kind of sound bed, and then his voice comes in, and it's fairly sultry. Hey, I've got love to give. Maybe you're not certain what that means. There's a real earnestness to the lyrics on this album. He's not like trying to blow you away with his poetry. I think he's trying to say simple things effectively. The first time I listened to this song, I didn't pick up any of the lyrics, because like just this drum beat and this atmosphere means you don't really need to listen to lyrics at all. There's this beautiful pre-chorus where this high whisper that's in the verse becomes a full 1980s British new wave. Sometimes you've got to leave and start all over. I think he's American, but it just sounds painfully like a great 80s song from England. And then like the drum takes the center, things like drop off, and then these like really sweet guitar licks. Again, this album is such an easy listen that you can not listen to it. Like you can not listen carefully to it and enjoy it as much as you can if you listen carefully. But if you listen carefully, if you just listen to the guitar work on this album, you have like the strumming at the end of the phrases in the beginning, and then here we had these little curling, and then we have the title of the song, "You've Got to Justify Your Life." So when I read this, "You've Got to Justify Your Life," I read that as a cynical, semi-political thing. I thought this was maybe from the perspective of someone from a marginalized group who feels as though in order to exist in this post-capitalist, this late-stage capitalist hellscape, we are in a state of having to constantly justify our lives by what we are able to produce. If we are not cis, if we are not straight, if we are not white, if we are not male, if we're not all the things that I am, you have to justify your existence on planet Earth. Hey, that's what I thought this was about. It's not. He explains in some article I found, this is grown-up music about self-realization. So he literally means that we all must justify our lives. That this isn't a political statement. This is a existential statement saying that if you live your life, you have to live your life in a way that's meaningful. Do you see what I'm saying about like the post-irony of this, the sincerity of this? Like that's, I had this whole reading just based on the title, much like I did with the title Rap I Yah, where I had all these assumptions based on what I've heard before, but instead it's just this nice idea. You have to justify your life. It's a nice idea. It's almost carpe diem. Almost. Cool little drum fill at the end of the chorus. The second verse is more developed. The bass is a little bit louder, a little bit more layers. And then one thing I'll say about this entire album is the last minute of every song is like always super interesting. Like breaks down for a bit with like just the guitar and kind of a almost. I also think a lot of George Clanton's music. Is that his name, by the way, or is this a joke on George Clinton? It's weird. It'd be like if your name was like Bootsy Callens. You know what I mean? It's just weird having like that name. Like James Braun. Like I don't know. You want me to keep going? It'd be like if your name was Rick Jones. Like it reminds me at times of the Chemical Brothers songs that I would skip. So I would listen to Chemical Brothers in the 90s because I want the block, rock, and beats. I want just the, that's what I want. That's what I listen to. And then like the albums would always be filled with these like slow, atmospheric songs. Oh, why is this so contemplative? I don't want to contemplate. I want to mosh, And this reminds me of that, which, hey, guess who's going to be revisiting his Chemical Brothers CDs later today and realizing that those songs are probably as good as the other ones. Every once in a while, it's like a little scratching sound, like a on the drums. I don't know how he does it. He does it a fair amount. And then at the very end, everything drops out except for these descending lines on the keyboard. And he does this a couple times on the album where he does this thing where he drops out every layer except for one. And then in that moment, you have sort of a Sixth Sense, plot twist where you're like, oh my God, that's the point of the song. It's the do 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 do. Like, that's the thing that's making me resonate with this chorus. It's not the hook of you've got to justify your life. And that's not it. The thing that actually makes it work is dee 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 dee. And by bringing your attention to it at the end, he helps to remind you of that. And then there's some like bells. I don't know. I gotta keep moving into the darkness over here. I swear to God, the light off my deck is just insane. Is this gonna be better? Oh yeah. I almost look like a human being there. This looks good. Okay. So I'm going to go through the rest of the album a bunch quicker. Album opens up with the song Everything I Want. Hey, George Clanton, don't do that. Don't make it super quiet. So I crank up the sound, and then I'm on the elliptical to YMCA watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and then all of a sudden my earballs just explode when you start the song. Hey, George Clanton, don't do that and have me forget it. And then I'm in my kitchen and I'm playing the music for my family and I'm like, they're going to like this. And it's like, ding, 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 ding. And I crank it up, ding, ding, ding. Okay? Please don't do that again. Very calm and expansive, dream poppy, layers and layers. And that's the other thing, like shoegaze and dream pop and this. The thing that really blew my mind was I found this term. Where was it? I put it in here somewhere. It was a term that he used to describe his own music on Bandcamp. Hypnagogic. Is that right? 1 second. Yeah, hypnagogic pop. So hypnagogic is the state right before you fall asleep. I think this is beautiful because it's not quite dream. Like, that makes sense to me. This doesn't feel like a dream. But that state right before you fall asleep is very powerful, especially for me. Like I don't know if that's weird, but like I can actually feel nightmares. I used to when I was younger. I would feel a nightmare coming and it would feel like my entire existence was being drawn into a hole. Like I would fall asleep into a nightmare. I know that's not possible, but this is what I thought was happening in my head. That state right before you fall asleep. This album is hypnagogic. And that's a very cool idea. And that's his style. And that's really what I feel here. And it's not dream pop. And it's not shoegaze. And it's not retro whatever. It's this weird effective estate. I guess that's tied into the Vaporwave idea as well. Just sort of maybe more interesting than psychedelics, right? Because psychedelics are, you're just a consumer. You just buy something and then you put it in your mouth and then your brain does stuff, Looks like caffeine or nicotine, whatever. It's just, oh, wow, my brain's changing. Congratulations. The fact that we're creating media, we're creating art, we're creating culture that can get you to those places without having to alter your brain chemistry, without having to become a consumer, that's interesting, Very kind of sweet song. I've got everything I want. I got everything but you. That's all I wanted. Again, there's just so much sweetness in this album. Then we get to the stamp, Justify Your Life. Then Punching Down, just has kind of a different feel. The album, especially the beginning of the album, everything flows really together here. Booming, low synthesizers, kind of automated, another heavy drum loop, layers upon layers upon layers. And at the end, he does that thing again where this arpeggiator sound jumps out, and then you realize that's what the whole thing was all about. I've Been Young, that's the single. There's a music video of this that's pretty good. It's pretty well done, kind of a retro video of like a 90s performance. 1 second, my dog is licking himself. I'm gonna throw a pillow over it. Toby, please stop. See if that works. He just gave me some side eye. Toby, don't worry. Everyone who's watching this video is gonna be super mad at me for interrupting you. They want you to be happy, Toby. They don't want me to be happy. Yeah. Although I've Been Young, I get why it's the single. It's maybe the catchiest song, more hard-hitting than the rest, you could say. But it's not, I don't know, it's not my favorite song on the album. I do like the theme of it. I think I'm growing old. A lot of this album seems to be about having a midlife crisis. I don't know how old this guy is. People have midlife crises earlier and earlier. It makes sense. we're living longer, but also our relationship to youth is becoming more exploited by large multinational companies, which need us to have that sense of FOMO to make sure that we go into credit card debt and develop crippling substance addiction, abuse issues. So, like there's a real, the premium on youth is being pushed for commercial ends, and people really feel that once they hit 30 or 40, once they're sort of out of the prime demographic for different advertising groups, once they're no longer in a state to have a rooftop party in New York City, that they're too old and that their life is lacking meaning, right? Now, of course, that's all a lie. Sorry. Life gets better. As long as you don't destroy your brain, life gets better as you get older. Just your back hurts. I'm a comedian. So anyways, but he's talking about getting old and kind of young enough to start a life and old enough to die, waste a couple of years while I make my mind. I really like that because that is sort of a lot of the truth for a lot of people. That was the truth for me quite a bit. That's how I felt when I was like 23. I'm just as guilty of whatever I'm describing. I remember it was harder for me to turn 23 than it was to turn 40. You understand me? Like 23 was like, oh no, I'm supposed to be younger, I love the idea of wasting a couple of years while I make my mind between starting a life and dying. And then we get to my favorite song, You Hold the Key and I Found It, which is the hypnagogic song on the album. This is my favorite song because it's the most unheimlich, the most uncanny, like a weird, odd Middle Eastern flute, like spacey sounds, like real planetarium. You could use the Super Mario 64 sound bank on the song and it wouldn't even sound different. But then there's this like warbled drum beat that comes on, real kind of enigma-y feel. It never really quite forms. This feels like this is the purest exercise of the concept of this album. Very simple, sleepy lyrics. You hold the key and I found it. Such a memory stuck inside. This is that hypnagogic perfection. This, like, the rest of the album I like, but this, like, makes me excited. You know what I mean? Like this is like, what is this? And I get it, that's sort of vaporwavy and that's the slowing down. And it's not like the most inventive thing ever. I understand there's other things that sound like it, but the execution of this idea is just perfect. There's great crashes after the singing and like weird layers of sounds and whines, and at times the bass, I can't really tell you why, but reminds me of Eric Avery of Jane's Addiction, one of my favorite bass players. It's almost like like a Finding Nemo seagull in the back, almost like a might, almost like sound in the back, and it closes with these thumping sounds. And this is great because the whole album has a sweep, it has a scope, it has a feel, it has a rhythm, because it leads into the song Vapor King / Super Real. Vapor King has this like really satisfying arpeggiated keyboard with a slight echo. I just want to crawl up inside it like a crepe Suzette, the slow drum beat comes in. He does a thing that he does for a lot of the second half of the album where vocals become part of the rhythm, become part of the layers, just sort of saying da da, and then this pitched up sounds, and it gets full vaporwave. You're never going to be the Vapor King. I assume that means vaporwave, not vaping. And then the second half is like introducing a whole other part of the album. It becomes a jungle drum beat, and then this sets up the rest. Strings kind of resolve it at the end. Then we get to FMUL, F Up My Life. This is the epitome. This song, oh my God. I am thankful that this song did not exist when I was 22 years old. Okay? When I was 22 years old and I was making a lot of questionable decisions about my life, and making a lot of youthful indiscretions, when I was being that kind of guy. I was listening to music like Hank Williams. I was listening to music that really sort of reinforced that kind of rambling, mistaken part of my life. I was listening to Harry Nilsson. I was listening to Hank Williams. I was listening to people who really fed into the sort of romantic ideal of somebody who's making mistakes and is therefore a good and interesting person. So this lyric feels like I'm effing up my life and it feels all right. Oh my God, this would have been my jam when I was younger. I would have used this to justify all sorts of crappy things that I did to myself. But anyways, it's fine. I mean, it's true. It feels like a very true lyric that he was sitting there and he feels that it's fine. And I guess that's maybe holding on to youth, because when you're young, it does. When you feel like you're effing up your life, it can be all right. The older you get, the less all right it is when you F up your life. That's how you end up like riding a bicycle to work, and not in a cool way, with like the click clack shoes and the tights. I mean, like a dude bicycling with a briefcase because he has a DUI. Then there's like the funky drummer beat by James Brown, bells, again, more Chemical Brothers style feel, like a phone disconnect at the end. This leads directly into Ooh Rap I Yah. I finally got the title right there. Very kind of PM Dawn feeling. This is my least favorite song on the album, but I do like it. I like everything on this album, especially just listening to it in the background is great. It's a great background and attention album. Some like soft saxophones, gentle happiness. I believe there's more to life than that. Ooh Rap I Yah. At this point, Ooh Rap I Yah, I think, becomes like a chant, like a meditative chant. Like when you what do you call those things? When you're meditating, what do you call those things? The mantra. It becomes like a mantra of the album, where it's rhythmic, it's nonsensical, but it's comforting. Ooh Rap I Yah. I'm so glad I did not. Of all the mistakes I've made here at 8:27 a.m. near Rochester, New York, I'm glad that I remembered the word mantra. I started recording outside because I thought that would be better, but the cicadas and crows were so invasive, I didn't have enough pillows to throw at all the cicadas. For You I Will is the final track, pitch down voice, another great beat, very funky, slowed down. There's a high female voice by someone named Hatchie, and she's great. Ooh, I like the mixture of these voices on here. I wish Hachi would be on more of the album. Synths and bird sounds, like the crows outside. And this is that thing that it's warm. This whole album is warm. It's warmth. It's comforting. It is sleepy time tea. It is cucumber water in a digital age, but it uses digital tools to be warming in a digital age, So it's not like we're listening to somebody with an acoustic guitar and a djembe and they're just like really getting you back to nature, Where this is somebody who's using Pro Tools, I assume, using a computer and networking online and using all these sounds, but what they're creating is somehow something of an oasis in our modern world. So there you go. Sorry, I left my stuff over there. I kept keeping it around. This is my mug. I drink coffee from it. It says Professor Skye's record review, and then down there's the little Easter egg. It says knowledge, ignorance is profound. So that's part of my belief on this channel is there's importance in ignorance, and this album is a great example. I didn't know anything about George Clanton. Once I gave into that and acknowledged my own ignorance, it led me to some pretty profound realizations. And I discovered an artist that I really like who's going to force me to revisit artists who I've always made fun of. These are Patreons. Speaking of cures in the digital age, you know what I'm saying? Like I print them out because I don't want to edit. So I'm not going to put in the thing. I just discovered there's another teacher at my college who has a YouTube channel with 500,000 subscribers. How cool is that? He does like communication skills stuff. It's very good. It's not at all the niche that I'm in here. But it also made me feel like, damn, I thought I was like hot stuff on campus with my 50,000. Damn. Anyways, he's a very nice guy. I'm going to talk to him about how to get 10 times more subscribers. But when I told him I don't edit, the look on his face, the look of jealousy on his face was like, that's right. I think I would take 1/10 of the subscribers to not edit. It's just beautiful. All right, until next time, I have to go back to campus. I have another day of long meetings. There's the camera.